Welcome to another episode on Take a Seat. This is a channel that I've created to foster and inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs. We interview business people, high quality influencers, and entrepreneurs. I allow you to be in the room where we conversate and hopefully you get some gems. Last time we had Samuel Leeds. He's somebody who came from a broken home. Not only that, he suffered from ADHD. But now he's one of the #1 course providers. Today, we've stepped it up a notch more. We've got Propertybykazy. You might know him as Kazy. Welcome to the show, Kaz.
How you doing, brother? You all right?
I'm all good, bro.
Good.
How's your day been?
It's been good. Obviously, you said South London. You got me as far south as you could find. Like, I don't know if I've ever done an hour and something minutes drive. Had to wait for a train, but we're all good. We got here in the end.
Wicked. We're actually in new studios today, guys. So it's all about discovering and finding new places. And let's hit this one. Kaz, I want to find out more about your journey.
Yeah.
I want to find out where you came from, what schools, what education, what courses you went on, and how you became the man you are today.
Cool. So like I said, I'm Kazeem Ali Balogan, or Kazy, Propertybykazy. As I'm known online. I'm a property developer and investor. In terms of early years, pretty standard, went to standard sort of junior primary schools. Actually, I went to one of the first Harris. So Harris is like a academy school. Okay. So it's actually, to be fair, it's like it's a public school, but they're like the academy set up, and it was one of the first ever ones. Now I think there's like sort of 30 or 40 of them dotted around South London. And their kind of goal is to turn around underperforming schools. So there was like a test to get into the school. They take people from sort of all different ranges, but it was a good school, good experience. I think one thing the academy schools kind of did was they almost forced you to be successful, in that like there was a high focus on results, which means if you weren't performing, they didn't look after you as much, which is that sort of downside. But fortunately, I sort of did quite well.
What kept you motivated
in school? Do you know what? Like, I'd say honestly, I have a good family background. So as much as kids growing up like causing little bits of trouble, nothing crazy, I was always respectful. So even if I was quote unquote naughty at times, like when it came to my engagements with adults, it was always respectful. So because of that, even when I didn't do certain things or got in trouble for certain things, it was like the teacher, Kaz, he's a good kid. Like, do you know what I mean? So I think having those family values coming from, so my dad's Nigerian, first generation migrant coming to the UK, mum's English, but I think, that sort of like West African culture, and just, having my parents to instill those values in me, that played a big part.
How did your parents sort of influence you? What like were their backgrounds in terms of work?
So my mum, she used to work in like sort of social care. So she used to work in Brixton, actually. Funnily enough, so coming as a woman, coming from like Wales, then South, sort of Devon, and then going to be a youth worker like in Brixton, like just off Whitefield Estate. You can imagine it was a different sort of challenging role for her. But yeah, she was all about helping. Do you know what I mean? Helping the youth, underprivileged, and so I think that was her area. My dad, sort of hustler, so came over when he started. He was driving minicabs. Being Nigerian, driving minicabs in Brixton. Like back then, it was the Nigerian versus the Caribbeans, and the Caribbeans were running it. So obviously, you had to kind of be quite boisterous, but working 2 jobs, doing that whilst selling that stuff at markets as well, so like wares from Nigeria markets. But he did that whilst studying and became a lawyer. So I think
wow,
that that ethos of we can make it. Like, it's not about where you start, it's about where you end up. I think it's always been important. It's always pushed me on in terms of your question on drivers.
Nice. And how did that influence you? So you've seen especially your father, so driven in terms of trying to educate himself, trying to, get in front of the hustle and bustle between everybody else. Did that have an effect in terms of you don't want that sort of lifestyle? You do want that lifestyle? What was your thoughts?
You know, like growing up, like there was conversations that me and my cousin, so like my cousin used to live with us as well. Like, so my dad's got one brother and he's got one son, and we're like the same age. But my granddad, like he passed away when my dad was like 3 or 4 in Nigeria. And because of that, like sometimes when the man passes in certain cultures, it's like, you know, the money that you had kind of gets lost or gets taken because it's not someone to kind of control the assets, unfortunately. So kind of where we were as a family kind of took a big step back. So I think we always looked at it like, you know, like my dad kind of said this, and then me and my cousins had this conversation where it's like, look, like say we was up here as a family and then certain things happened that took us back. Like it's just my dad came and, you know, he did what he did. But that's effectively like his was then to pass the baton to say, okay, it's your job to then elevate us further. So I think I've always just looked at it that, you know, I believe in my own greatness. So, you know, I see the stuff that people do around me, and all I want to be able to do is put myself, family, etc., in a position to have options and opportunities.
What sort of subjects did you do in school? And because year 10 comes and you have a little choice on certain technology, sciences, what route you want to go. Was there any sort of direction you wanted at that stage?
So in school, it was a weird one. Like, so they start off and you start with like, so I was in the higher sets basically. And that's because, remember I said there was a test to get into the school, and it was like a non-verbal reasoning test, which I was really good at. But I'm actually quite severely dyslexic. So a lot of stuff when it came to sort of the reading and writing side of things, I wasn't doing that well with. But then I think it was certain conversations with certain teachers and them actually saying, okay, you're dyslexic, but, you know, we can offer you this support function, you know, made me realize that we can push on, and there was a lot more that I could do. And I think it was only, so you asked about sort of year 10 and 11, and it was like, you know, you can either do like different types of English. There's it's like tiers where you can do a certain level and you can get like, the maximum you can get is a C, but it's a much easier paper. Yes. And there's the higher one. And I think because they told me, oh, you're dyslexic, I thought, oh yeah, I'll just do the easy one. And like, but in hindsight, it's like, I think if I pushed myself a lot more and didn't use somebody telling you, oh, maybe you're dyslexic or you've got ADHD or you've got X, Y, or Z, and you don't use those excuses, you can achieve a lot more. In terms of what I did, I think it was pretty generic, you know, English, math, science. I did history, always liked history. I think I did geography. I think I got 11 GCSEs.
Nice. Did better than me, bro. I got 5.
Yeah, tried,
had to do a couple in college as well, you know?
I think, do you know what? Saying that, I say I got 11, but I feel like I have to prove. I think I got 10. I think I failed French. I got like an E, but that's still a G, so it's just an E. Like, but it's yeah, I got 10 A to C's, and then I got an E in French.
Nice. So you finished school now. It's great to hear that your school recognized, you know, that you had dyslexia, and they try to help and support as much as possible to try drive all the students. Some schools don't do that, but, you know, maybe some parents can even take away something from this, you know, to identify you shouldn't let any sort of disability try to affect or hinder you. There's always another option that you can do. What did you do after school?
So after school, like, so my day was pretty generic. After school, I went to college.
What subjects?
Economics, law, history, and business studies. I always wanted, like, obviously my dad was a lawyer in my head, like, and I like arguing with people. Like, ask anyone that I know, I'm annoying. Like, I'll just argue till I win, basically. So I thought, yeah, barrister, that's me. But my law teacher left first week. So I had no teacher for my whole first year. So I ended up getting a U in law. So I had to drop that, which was unfortunate because I still feel like that was kind of my calling. But yeah, did history, economics, found out that I really liked economics. And that was sort of where my passion lied.
Do you think things happen for a reason?
Yeah, no, always. Like I always say, I'm a big believer in that. And I've taken that process into business, that whatever's meant for me will be mine. And if it's not, sometimes it's, you know what I mean, it's protecting me from something worse that could happen or leading me to something better that could happen down the line.
Nice way of thinking about it. And all while this is happening, so let's just say you're 18 now, you've done your sort of A-levels. Has there been any work experience that's been going on in the background?
Oh yeah, I always worked. Like I've been working. Like, so from whatever it is, 11, 12, when you can get a paper round, got one paper round, got another paper round again. We got two paper rounds now. We're sort of running same time.
And did you have to? Was that before school, after school, weekends?
That was whenever there was time, before school, after school, weekends. Like, just so I'd always make sure I did it because I wanted to get paid. And even outside of that, like, it was like always taking something and realizing how can you make more out of it. So at the same time I was doing the paper round, I went, it was called Sainsbury's, like Saver Center at the time. It was the big Sainsbury's, and they had the machines, the machines where you could print business cards, like what you would do on like a Vistaprint now. Yeah. You could print them. So me and my friend James, we printed like something that said, because he had a paper round as well. And we said, like leaflet delivery specialist business cards. I went to drop those off to like all the pizza shops.
And entrepreneurs, and
whatever. Yeah. And because if you're going out already and you're already going to deliver these papers, if someone's now going to give you their leaflets to put inside, you can get paid twice for doing, do you know what I mean? So they always say like, work smarter, not harder. And that's what we were trying to do. So we was hitting up pizza shops and chicken shops and we didn't get loads of customers, but got enough that it meant that we were getting double what we were getting paid for just doing the paper rounds.
Wow. Even I've learned something now, just by doing a normal paper round, and you can add another leaflet and you're working for two people at the same time. It's working smart.
So that's it. And that's kind of, but I've always worked like, so whilst I think last year of school, like you could get a job at 15. I don't know if that's still the case, but 15 you could work from. So I was working in Primark in Croydon when it opened.
Wow.
And that was real. When people say like, paying your dues, working in Primark was really paying your dues. But it was a good vibe because it was like a lot of young people. And, so I worked in Primark.
Especially the Christmas temp staff, like you get hammered.
I think we all stuck. It was a brand new store. So no one knew what was going on. We all just started together. So worked in Primark to start with. And that was like whatever that was, it might have been less than £4 an hour.
Yes,
like because
that makes sense.
It's it's the different like sort of minimum wage standards when you're that age. But then I think I left there when I got a job at Phones For You. Remember Phones For You?
Of course, that's it. How old are you guys?
Well, I'm 33.
33, okay.
How old are you?
36. So you're a few years behind me.
Do you know why though? Because a lot of people. Like, particularly, all it takes is for them to be like 27 and they don't even have a clue what Phones For You is anymore.
Skipped a generation.
Yeah, like they ain't got a clue about that. But so I worked there, and that was like, I think that kind of, I understood about sort of sales and upselling and compliance and things like that. Working there, and I think, Phones For You, when I go back and look at the people that have come out of Phones For You and some of my friends and the things they've achieved, they had a proper like system. So when you started in that job, you had to go and spend a week in Birmingham learning how to sell, learning how to deal with clients, learning how to build relationships, build rapport, learning how to upsell. And I think, so when I talk about like my journey, I think a lot of people kind of downplay the benefits people can get from a 9 to 5 and the skill set you learn because, you're getting paid to learn. Like I was getting paid to go and learn skills that have allowed me to close like whether it's 6-7 figure deals. And I learned that in a job that I was getting paid for when I was a teenager. So I think when a lot of people want to maybe run before you can walk, like I'm not saying like, I love this Gen Z, millennials, that everybody's an entrepreneur. But sometimes you got to kind of get your feet wet a little bit. And if you're getting paid to do it, then it's a win-win.
I totally agree with you there. One of my first sort of official paid jobs, so I'm not talking about a little cash and carry where you're getting cash in hand, etc., was in McDonald's. People laugh like, you worked in McDonald's, but I learned so many different skills there, and you get put on courses as well. Yeah. You got to know, how to handle pressure when somebody's waiting for their food, time cards, raw waste, going through your drive-through, how long that takes for a car to get through, and you make one mistake, the whole thing's mangled or messed up. But that was one of my first jobs. I still use that today because it teaches you the art of managing so many different things at the sort of same time, so it gives you the tool, that tool in your armor where you can use going forward in terms of, I can now apply this, that when I'm doing something in property, I can manage a building site, I can manage rent going on at the same time, so many different things. It just gives you that aspect of looking at multiple things at the same time.
I mean, that's just the thing about life. Like life, there's so many lessons that you pick up, whether it's through work, education, family, relationships, whatever it is. But everything that you do, don't look at it as, it's a waste of time. Look at it as an opportunity to take learning from that would allow you to not make mistakes going forward. Because like I've always learned a lot more from, the negative things than the positive things, because they you're forced to remember because you don't want it to happen again.
You get burnt once, you don't want to get burnt twice again, you know? You got to look at what you've learned and what you can use from them transferable skills. Along with this, what did you spend your money on in your younger days?
It depends when, because if you're talking young, you know, I mean, you leave the house with £1, you leave the house at like 10 a.m, you come back when it gets dark, and that pound, you know what I mean, you might get a Panda Pop, an Ice Pole, or this and that, and it goes for ages. Now £1, you can't even get a can of Coke, and you got 20p left. There's nothing that you can even get for 20p. But yeah, phones for you, like, because it was a sales role, like, we was making some good money in phones for you. So phones for you, you know, was going on holidays. We was, you know, it was like House of Fraser was across the road. We was shopping every day. We was buying, like, you know, a lot of like just designer bits,
material items.
Yeah. Like,
any regrets on that side?
No, but not because they were smart purchases, because I think doing it at that stage when I was making like good money for my age and relatively a lot of money for the time stopped me from needing to do it when I started making what you would call quote unquote proper money in property, because I'd kind of already done it and I'd seen that you can waste money quickly doing it.
Okay. And so we finished college now. You're at Phones for You in the background, is that right?
Yeah.
What happened next?
So next I went to university. I went to Brunel, went straight from college to university, went to Brunel. Brunel was cool, it was kind of, but I wasn't really in the right place to go to university. I was going more for my parents because that's what they wanted. And or more so just as well, socially, it's just what you do. It wasn't really a thought of, okay, what's next for me and what do I want to do and what aligns with where I'm at. But, you know, so I went there. I was there for like a year and a half, ended up dropping out of Brunel. And I think I had like a little moment where I was just like, man, like, because I went to university a year later because I redid a year in college. And then I was at Brunel for like 2 years. So some of my friends were basically, by the time I dropped out of Brunel finally in my second year, they were already finishing and going to get jobs as like investment bankers or, you know, going to get jobs in the city. And I'm like, damn, like if I don't, right now, I don't necessarily have that skill set that would allow me to get a job. And I think I kind of had a moment of like, at that age, wherever I was, sort of maybe 21, I was like, wow, I messed it up. Is it too late? Like, and it's crazy that I was thinking like that at 21. Like, is it too late? Because 12 years on, like, you know, there's so much that I'm trying to do and still trying to do. So I think just as a kind of a lesson that, you know, it's never too late. And like having conversations like this, I have conversations with people like, who can I talk about? Like Stephanie Taylor that was talking about being, you know, a single mom and being on benefits like in her 40s. And then, you know, now she's, you know, she just bought a brand new Porsche and she's kind of turned everything around. She did built $1 million property portfolio and all of these things. So I think it's very easy to look over at other people and be like, I'm underperforming, or I need to make it now. But I think it's all relative. You just got to run your own race.
Definitely. I always say to myself, I always have a conversation with my own self. But my 80-year-old self, I don't know if I'm going to live that long, but I always say, what would my 80-year-old self say to me right now? I'm like, I've still got 50 years to do what I got to do, you know? And so you've just got to have no regrets, I think. You know, anything is possible. And I believe some of the barriers that we put out there are just in our own heads, you know? We create them, nobody else. And if there's negative people and the wrong environment around you, then step out of that, you know? Because you only need positive people and like-minded people around you, you know? So you've dropped out of uni now. What's the plan now, Kazy?
So yeah, I didn't really, I had that kind of couple months of feeling sorry for myself. I was like, but I still at Phones for You, still make it, but it was just like, I felt like I'd outgrown it because I'd been there for a while.
But you didn't stop.
I didn't stop, no. So I still carried on. I think that's important. Still carried on, still making money. And I think I went on a holiday and I was like, you know what? Sometimes you bury your head in the sand. You're like, I'm just going to go on holiday and see what happens. So I went to Egypt and it was like, you know, I sort of saw for the first time, I think, so that's what, couldn't even tell you what year it is, maybe 2010, something like that. 2011 maybe, went to Egypt, and I'm like, oh,
You're like 21 years old, yeah?
yeah, this Shisha cult, I like this little Shisha vibe, like, you know, I was like, okay, this is cool, like, I like this Shisha stuff. So when I come back to the UK, I bought, like, spoke to them, like people out there, bought a load of Shisha pipes, like the flavors, etc., and started like just doing Shisha. Like, you know, at that age, got loads of friends, like the boys from like Afari and City Love and all these different people that do like their club nights, and started doing Shisha at people's club nights.
So what does that involve? Sorry, you bring this apparatus of Shisha
so basically,
to their clubs.
So we would speak to them, because you got to bear in mind, sort of 5 years prior, the smoking bans come into place.
Yes.
So you've got an opportunity now where smokers have to smoke. So that's your opportunity. You've also got the fact that the clubs want to cater to their smokers. They're creating these nice outdoor smoking areas, like some of them seating, etc. And, you know, but it was a case of Shisha was quite new. So we would go to the clubs or go to the, you know, go to the venues where, like, look, we'll offer to do Shisha. And they're like, how much are we gonna pay them? We're like, look, we're not gonna pay you anything, but you can advertise it, say you've got Shisha, you've got a Shisha garden in your venue, and we charge the consumer directly. So started obviously making money, minimal overheads, and Shisha's got massive margins. Like, it's, you know, it's better than a lot of the illegal trades that people apply. And it's like 1,000% markup on the Shisha. So like really good margins, building relationships with people that are doing existing nights in these venues. We ended up in a, like, you know, sort of central London clubs, really popular central London clubs. I think we was in Proud too, which was the biggest club in the UK at the time.
How did you get into these venues in central London? Like
the thing is, like, if you've got something, what's the value proposition? How do you get into anything? How does anybody get their products, you know, in a place? Like, if you want to get into Selfridges, if you want to get into Harrods, like, you know, it might look at it like, oh, it's crazy. Why would these people want me? But you've got to create a value proposition. So ours was, look, you've got these areas, you're not doing it. We're not going to charge you anything. It's no loss. If you don't like it, you can tell us to go tomorrow. There's no contract. And if you see an uplift in people that are coming to your venue, then it's a win for both of us.
Nice. And so would that involve you going to these clubs first to check out the environments and saying, have they got that outdoor space?
Yeah, I mean, we were like, you know, we was young, we was outside. So I know the venues that I know that it would work at, because I've seen them. You walk into somewhere, it's like, in a property, if you drive past a property that you see has got a garage on the side and land to the side, you know that might be ripe for a development. If I go out and I go to a venue and I see they've got like coverings, they've got heaters, they've got benches, they've got a setup, they've got, you know, maybe running water, etc. I'm like, yeah, this can work here. So started doing venues. Then from venues, started doing like some of the festivals. So pitching, so the same way you'd pitch to do like food at a festival, you can pitch to do some other stuff. So we pitched to do Shisha. So we had like pop-up tents. I think my favorite one I ever did, I always talk about, was like V-Fest, because it was a case of they gave us like 15 tickets to the festivals. I just told my friends, look, I got tickets, like, you lot can come for free. You get free like camping, you stay overnight, but you got to work for me for like 4 or 5 hours a day. So they come. So I didn't really have any overheads apart from paying for the pitch and the setup. You know, we were doing, you know, it was like a 3-day event. We're doing thousands of pounds a day profit.
You seem like a hustler, bro. Because you're de-risk. I think something that I'm spotting with you is you de-risk it as fast as possible. So
yeah, I've never liked risk.
You know, it's like when you're at the club, you don't want to pay no rent in case you don't sell anything, but you've made it so you've got in for sort of free, and the only thing that's costing you is the product itself. You sell a couple of them and you'll break even already. You're going to festivals and you're getting free labor in a way, but you're giving people an experience in exchange.
And that's it. Like, and it was a vibe. Like, and I think anything that you do, you have to have a passion for. So at that time, had a passion for, you know, the Shisha, like, and it was something that I genuinely enjoyed. So off the back of that, I managed to get a license for a venue. I actually went back to university during this time as well. So I went back to South Bank to do like economics and business.
Was that worth it?
Yeah, no. So it's same thing. Like, for me, economics is one of those vocations that in any conversation, I can be involved in a discussion because of my economics background. Because to a degree, money makes the world go round. Economics is the study of money, which means, you know, in a conversation about what do you think is going to happen to Twitter next, I can have a conversation. I can have an input in it. Whether it's about, you know, global warming, whatever the conversation is, I feel like my background allows me to be involved and have something positive and like with value to bring to conversations.
While we're on that topic, What did you pay for uni at that stage?
I paid, I think it's 3,000 when I was there. So 3,000 a year.
3,000. So that course cost you what, 9,000?
Yeah.
Today, you're now paying maybe 30,000 for that same course. Balancing that out, would you advise somebody today to go to uni to do the same thing?
So like, I worked like in finance for about sort of 4 months or something like that. But realistically, I've never really used my degree in terms of proactively, here's my degree, like that's why I got the job, and then use what I learned on a day-to-day basis. However, that being said, I think the skills that I learned in terms of specifically relating to the course, the soft skills in terms of working with a team or managing a team, depending on the group projects, in terms of time frame, delivery, accountability, all of those things I learned. For me, they were of value. Now, that doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be of value to everybody, but for me, I would still do it again.
Okay. Even paying that uplift. You don't think there's other courses or mentors that can help you, or other work experiences that could do the same thing?
100%. I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I'm saying for me, based on my personal experience, I know the value that I got out of it. I know that, for example, even if that course costs me whatever it is, 10K a year, if that course costs me 20K a year, there's things that I've learned that I know I've made that back from. It doesn't matter if it costs me 100K, I know where I've made that money back from what I learned in that course. And even sometimes as well, it's, we talk about the value of your circle. Some of the people that I met whilst at university as well,
network
that I've done business with going forward as well, and made that money back. And I don't necessarily think it's for everybody, because when I went to Brunel, it wasn't for me. So if you ask me the money I spent at Brunel, that money's in a bin because I wasn't in the right place. But when I was in the right place at South Bank, that money is almost invaluable.
Sounds like you're saying you got to almost know what you want and what you want out of, paying that money for a course. So if you're there sitting down, paying for a course, you got to make sure that you're absorbing and you're taking in, and there's a purpose behind it, that you're going to get some value back at the end of it.
I think there's a lot of courses that maybe you don't need to go to university for. So for example, I don't know, maybe a course in journalism, for example, maybe you get more. That's no shots at journalists, but I don't know. So correct me.
I spend 30,000 traveling the world.
But I'm saying so I think maybe that more practical experience would be better there. And I think maybe some of the arts courses and things like that may work more from a practical standpoint as opposed to the academic standpoint.
Sure. Yeah. So moving on, you're doing this Shisha business. How long did it last for?
The business as a whole, probably sort of 4 years.
And that's what you did full time once you was running that?
Well, I was at university full time technically.
Sure.
My attendance was probably 30%.
Right.
So I was dabbling in between the two, but managed to get make them both work.
Did you make a lot of money from the Shisha business?
I made enough money to get into property in London, so it's not a massive amount. Again, I don't know. Money is very relative. What's a lot of money? Because you ask someone with no money what a lot of money is, and ask someone with a lot of money what a lot of money is, you're gonna get two different answers.
But you could support yourself.
I think that's, again, with the Shisha side of things, I'd already spent money. But in terms of buying designer clothes, I'm saying we got to go on holiday here, there, and everywhere. I'd kind of done a lot of that from Phones for You days. So when it now came to actually making what you'd call proper money from Shisha, I was more in a case where I'm just saving this money, and I'd gone from Gucci back to maybe H&M.
Primark. There we go. Okay, and what caused the Shisha place to fold, or for you to move on from it?
So effectively, the premise that we had is it was the ability to be able to grow. The premise that we had a license to trade as opposed to a lease. For those that are not familiar, effectively, when you've got a commercial lease, that's yours indefinitely, subject to you having break clauses. That's yours. So you can afford to spend money on the building because you're responsible for it. And also you have you can sell that lease or sell, your business as a going concern and get a return on your investment. With a license, it's almost like a AST, in that you're there for a set period of time, but at any point in time, your landlord could be like, right, we want it back. So there was some issues with the building that we couldn't justify spending the money on sort of sorting out. And it kind of meant we was sort of treading water for a little while. Like the business was going well, but we couldn't take it to the next stage. And I think because of that, sort of lost a bit of the passion for it and decided, I wanted to do something else, which is what I started doing. Basically, I said, okay, look, what do I want to do? And I think for a lot of people, like, we just say property. We gravitate towards property because it's tangible. You know that everybody's always going to need somewhere to live. It's something that you understand. You can touch it. You can feel it, and you can see the difference. It's an asset class that, again, for someone who doesn't like risk, it has an intrinsic value. Unlike a lot of other things that maybe you don't necessarily understand or that fluctuate a lot more. Although property prices do go up and down, and we're talking about them potentially going back down for a little while now, if you look at it sort of more outwardly, you'll see that over the long term, property prices have, generally speaking, gone up.
Yeah, so property is very cyclical. It goes in cycles, booms and busts. But when you do look at, for example, wages, they always go up over time. And it's whether, you either your entry point's got to be right. And if that's not correct, then you've obviously got to have time in the market to see them tough times through. And there's a saying, when the tide is out, you see who's naked. So if your strategy isn't right, anybody can do good when the market's going up, but not everybody can when managing risk. And, there's a downturn in the market, then people get exposed who've over leveraged.
Yeah, I mean, look, we saw that. We saw that with the crypto guys. We saw that with the NFT guys. All the stock guys that were saying, yeah, join my Telegram group. We made this amount of money, we made that amount of money. We're shouting through the rooftops like they've gone missing. And I think, it's not maybe going to be exactly the same, but you're going to see a lot of people in property that were just riding the wave of prices going up. Yeah. I think that the proof is going to be in the pudding now for a lot of people, and see that, okay, do you actually know your stuff? Can you actually make a deal work? Do you actually have the network, the connections, the know-how to make money, in maybe a more stagnant market?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I also say, sometimes is what we do know is we don't know. I always say that saying. So it's how much you don't know. So if crypto you feel is quite lucrative, I feel you've got to spend money that you can afford to essentially lose. If you're going to have a dab at it.
Did you lose money in crypto?
I've actually put money in crypto. It reached 300,000 back in November and currently is at 50,000. So some people can say there was an unrealized loss of 250,000. At the same time, my entry price was 20,000.
Okay.
So as an investor, a swing trader, I've just bought my lottery tickets. Right now, I'm 1.5x up. Put in 20 is at 50. So I'm unemotional right now. So if it goes up or down, it doesn't matter. It can even go back down to my entry level and I'm cool, because I think it is a new market. We are in a different digital era, and I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I can afford to put my lottery ticket. And whether that means 2,000, 200 or even 20 quid for you, you should look at your own finances and say, well, do I want to allocate any risk to that? Yeah. I'm not saying it's the way to go, but if that thing does hit the moon, then at least I got my lottery ticket. And I see it to at least go to 1 million in the next few years if it does what it does. It's one of the fastest growing assets is Bitcoin. It's in a 10-year period is hit 1 trillion market cap. And we don't know. It's never been hacked. It's a certain supply, 21 million in the world. We just got to see what happens. And if it doesn't happen, then I could have afforded to lose that. But if it does happen, I've still got my lottery ticket and I know what to do with them gains. And I know what's worked for me over the last, 17, 18 years is property also. So this leads me on to my question. What was your first property that you dabbled in? Was it a project you did? Was it a rent to rent? Did you buy a property? How did you learn about the property field? Because that's what we know you for.
Yeah. So, it's funny actually. Even whilst I was whilst I had the Shisha bar, whilst I was at uni, I did have rent to rents. At the time, they weren't called rent to rents. I just had seen, people, again, same thing, spotting an opportunity. So I had some, family friends, people that just lived in the UK that live in Nigeria that bought assets, but naturally living overseas, had agents that weren't looking after it. So they'd kind of call me to be like, Kazy, can you check on this? Can you do that? These people are not paying X, Y, Z. And it's, it's just you asking questions. Like, you always say, you don't ask, you don't get. So like, they're not paying. Oh, how much they paying? And you're just looking at, there's a margin to be made here. Like if so, I managed to get, some HMOs, properties I turned into HMOs, and I got one. And off the back of doing it well, because this is somebody who lived overseas, was constantly having the wool pulled over their eyes by their agent, telling them, the tenants aren't paying, there's all these repairs, X, Y, or Z. And basically they went from maybe receiving rent once every 2 months to all these issues to just having their rent paid in full one time every month. And I just dealt with repairs, got, the HMO license, like maximize what that property was, what I was paying to them versus what I was getting in. And then they recommended me to sort of more of their friends. So basically I used to deal with overseas landlords' properties. But that wasn't, in my head, that wasn't like a property business. It was just like a hustle. Like, that was maybe sort of predated the Shisha. My first actual deal off the back of making money out of the Shisha business was taking a majority of my profits and buying a property. I bought it on a bridging loan. It was a 1-bedroom flat in SC26, which is Sydenham. 1-bedroom flat, Victorian, ex-housing association. Bought it for 205,000. I think as a 1-bedroom flat, it was probably like, and it needed work. It need the full refurb. It was, your typical. I think it had like sort of red carpets throughout. I think it even had carpet in the bathroom. So that sort of property, to give you an idea of what it was. But realistically, as a 1-bedroom flat, it was worth £250,000 after a refurb, which meant with me buying it at 205, I spent 25k on the refurb. By the time you take into account like a little bit of stamp duty, but because I bought it on a bridging loan, the finance costs, that would have had like a ceiling cap as being break even. But what I was able to do is move the kitchen from the existing kitchen, put that into the living room to create an open plan kitchen living room, which meant we now turned that 1-bed to a 2-bed. As a 2-bed, the ceiling price was around 300,000. So the refurb costs were exactly the same. You're just using a license to alter agreement and building control for moving the kitchen, all of which don't require additional planning. So there's not really adding additional risk. The refurb might be a couple of £1,000s more because of relocating some plumbing, but effectively you increase the value by £50,000. And that was that profit from the first deal. I think we ended up selling it, 309, I want to say, between 300 and 310 anyway.
So you flipped it?
Yes, I flipped that one.
You also just spoke about bridging finance, something I've never really used because I'm like, if I don't have the money, I'm not going to do it. And for example, had I done that this summer, I could have been left high and dry in terms of the market turned, prices are starting to go down, rates are going up, you're going against the grain there. And earlier on, you said you're not much of a risk taker. You don't like risk. Why was bridging loan why was it right for you at this time?
So that's funny.
How did you hedge against that?
So that's funny because obviously the bridging finance, like my broker at the time said, first deal, bridging finance, they called it a baptism of fire. He said, yeah, which is ironic because I don't like risk. But the way I looked at it, that I know, they can't unreasonably deny a license to alter agreement. It doesn't require additional planning. So I know that I'm creating the value. So although there is an element of risk through the cost of the finance through bridging finance, which is effectively a short-term product to buy a property with a higher rate of interest, although there is that additional risk, I've insulated myself from that risk by adding value day one. And one of the most important lessons in property is you make your money when you buy. Because I was able to buy at the right price where there's an uplift of up to £100,000, it meant that, let's say, for example, my cost of finance over a 6-month period was like, £12,000. Even if that period was doubled, we still made money. If that period tripled, we still made money. If the end value, the GDV, dropped by 10%, we still made money. If the bill cost increased by 10%, we still made money. So I think stress testing your deal with all of those different parameters. What if bill cost goes up? What if sales price go down? What if it takes longer? So your cost of finance goes up. And they're the three key things that can really change in any deal. You can insulate yourself from risk to a degree.
That's brilliant. Guys, you've got to be taking some notes here. What Kazy's talking about here is contingency, you know, backup plans. What happens when shit hits the fan, really? And it looks like you got all of them perimeters sort of covered, which made you feel confident. Because we all know what's going to go right. And when they all go right, it puts the thing on steroids, you know?
And that's it. So it's obviously that's when you work on worst case scenario. So you do look like what you think. You do your good comparables. Every point you can actually work out to a degree where things are likely to go. And then you then take a realistic hedge on, okay, what if it gets, what if it's a little bit worse in this and this scenario? And if it's better, then that's great. That's just money. And, you know, the reality is you probably won't, like I said, you won't learn as much lessons. When it goes great, you just say, okay, yeah, I'm great. You pat yourself on the back. But if things don't go as well and you've got those, you know, stop gaps in place, they stop you from, you know, potentially losing everything, which is possible. Like when you take out a loan, it says if you don't make these payments, your property will be repossessed. Like that's not a joke. All these things are serious. So you've got to try and
100% serious. It's something called FOMO, feeling of missing out, just because everybody else enters the market because it looks like it's going crazy and hitting the moon. Do your own research is what I'm hearing. Kazy, so how old was you when you done this first flip?
I want to say like 23.
So you've been in this property game, let's just say 10 years now. Yeah. You know, can you just run through a couple of things that you've just an overview of some of the things that you've done? So after that one.
Yeah, so done like loads of fun stuff. So done like some like luxury homes, you know, £1 million plus homes, or I just do refurbs, very straightforward refurbs. But I think the nice thing about doing the more luxury or sort of subprime under 2 million is that you get to have more fun with materials. When you're doing, you know, flats, you know, there's only a certain amount you can spend. But
single pendant light, a couple of little white switches.
I'll be honest with you, I'm an overspender. Like I'm an overspender. I like my stuff to look nice. I feel like the thing is now, a lot of the big brands that used to do, for example, the big developers that will do single pendants, it doesn't matter what they're doing now. When you see new builds, everything is, you know, whether it's chrome switches in the kitchen, whether it's, you know, spotlights, etc. Or whether it's quartz for the worktops, people are going that step further. And I think, you know, you've got to remain competitive. But yeah, so done like some luxury homes.
Is that as a builder or
as a developer?
So how do you, like, what does that involve? Just you buying an asset, developing it and selling it on for the flip? Is it about flipping? Is it cash flow for you? Or is it anything generational? Do you keep stuff in your portfolio?
So I've got a portfolio, I've got stuff that I keep, but I think, you know, if you start, you got to look at it like this. If you start day one, let's say, for example, in London with like £100,000, so you buy that property that I spoke about for whatever 200, so you're putting 70k in on your deposit. You then got your refurb costs and your stamp duty. Your 100k is gone. Even if you refinance at, you know, 300k, 75% loan to value, you know, you only pull out so much of your money, which means you'll pay by the time you've done one or two deals. The majority of your money is tied up. So you're basically, if I just did the first ones and kept them as an investment, I probably would still be talking about having maybe that one or two properties that increased in value. So my focus has been on flipping to be able to build the capital to allow me at a certain point in time to say, okay, now I'm going to sort of take my foot off the gas and now I'm going to chill. But for now, I'm all about building that capital. So I think you're always at two different stages of your life. Like you're at kind of wealth creation mode where you're trying to really grow and, you know, be as big as possible. And then wealth preservation mode where then you're like, you know what, maybe I just want to have the buy to lets that are cash flowing and this is my yield. This is and I know what I need, you know, on a monthly or yearly basis. And that's more your target of sort of lifestyle as opposed to really growing maybe that net worth.
I think it all depends on your strategy going forward. I would like to ask, that first property you bought and you sold for 209.
309.
309, sorry. The one that you created an extra bedroom with, do you know what that's currently worth?
So that's the thing, yeah. So that, like, you know, has a 2-bed there, maybe like 425s, something like that, 450 maybe.
Because for me, I'm quite generational like that, and I like to try hold on to my stock. And I just feel if you wait long enough, then you can revisit that property to then, retake that finance out and then build forward.
But it's about how quickly do you want to do things, because in an upwards market, yeah, maybe, but with the way interest rates are now, again, it makes it more difficult. But let's say you took that property, for example. Now, I did it, within the space of like 9 months, made £50,000 profit.
Yeah.
Exited and made my £50,000. Clean, we're out. We go again. Obviously, you'd got CGT, so it's realistically going to be more like £40,000. But made that in like 9 months. Now, if you retain that property, we're talking sort of when I'm 23, so like 10 years ago, that I said about 45, so it's gone up another £120,000, but that's only £12,000 a year. And it's, if you've got that money in your pocket, how much more money can you make? So I'll give you like my most recent example. I did some flats over in Streatham where I just did 2 flats, bought for around 520,000, spent around £100,000 on the refurb. Obviously got cost of finance, stamp duty, etc. But the 2 flats ended up being worth around 900,000.
Wow.
For the 2 flats.
Massive up.
So it's like 200k profit, which means effectively it's almost an all money out deal. So for you, that's about generational wealth. You might be like, okay, you know what? I can keep these 2 flats, get my money out and go and do something else and get my money out. But for me, you got to remember, even at 75% loan to value, that still means you've got about 200k of money that could be working for you in those flats. Now, if those flats over there, realistically, like they're going to net around £600 profit a month each, which is sort of, like 15 grand a year or something like that.
7,200 per flat. So yeah 14,400 something. Yeah, 15 grand. Yeah, you're there.
So just under 15 grand a year.
Yeah.
Making 15 grand a year off your 200 grand. As a property developer, how much money could you make if you had that 200 grand and flipped it? And I know that realistically, if I'm making an average of sort of minimum 25-30% return on like capital employed, I'm leaving money on the table by keeping those flats. That you might benefit from capital appreciation some years, but for me, I feel like I'm in a place where I'd still rather work my money.
Amazing. Yes, thank you for sharing that, by the way. So that's it for part 1, and join us back for part 2, where we'll be finding out where Kazy finds his best sort of deals and what's worked for him the best, and we can share that with you.